The last day in Paris was dedicated to Sacré-Cœur, Opera Garnier, and a walk along the Seine looking at all the shops selling books, magazines, posters, trinkets, old photographs, all the way to Shakespeare and Company, that beautiful bookshop I had been wanting to see for a few years. It was a bright and lovely morning, and we absolutely loved the walk up Montmartre, the large hill atop which stands tall, the Basilica of the Sacré-Cœur, from where you get some stunning views of Paris. We had seen Sacré-Cœur from atop the Arc de Triomphe on our first evening there, so being so close to it and then inside it was going to be an exciting experience. The walk up the hill was exciting as all the shops lining both sides of the street were opening for the day and the energy was already rubbing off on us. Montmartre's association with a troubling chapter in Paris's history, the Bloody Week, does not make it easy to admire its beauty. The sweeping views, however, and the beautiful basilica and its white dome were so stunning that we couldn't help but be enraptured. The fact that the sky was a crisp blue that morning made the basilica look spectacular in its white serenity. We couldn't get over the fact that Parisians get to walk and jog and run around their glorious historical monuments, be it the sprawling gardens of Versailles or around the Louvre or around the Pantheon, or here, how cool they get to do it despite Paris being a busy city. We hoped and still hope that we can make our cities more walkable in the days to come. Now the walk down the hill was thrilling. Some of the prettiest chocolate and confectionery shops, bread shops were on this street. As people who love souvenirs, especially postcards and magnets, we were like two kids in candy store. This was where we picked up gifts for our friends and parents, while the city monuments were beautifully replicated as showpieces and tote bags and cards and all the creative things one could think of. I was most happy at a shop that had all kinds of merchandise on The Little Prince. We abstained from buying anything plastic, of course, but were certainly guilty of admiring everything in these shops. It was then time for the gorgeous Opera Garnier. In the previous video, you might have seen what this glorious building looked like on the previous evening under a dramatic sky. This noon too, it was majestic, its gilded statues glowing gold and ethereal. The front of the building has a few statues: Bach, Pergolesi or Pergolesi, Haydn, artists and composers of German, Austrian and Italian origin. On the first floor facade are busts featuring Mozart, Beethoven, Rossini and other artists. This image of the Opera Garnier facade with sculpture labels might be of interest to you if you like such details. It's on the Opera Garnier Wikipedia page. Since there was still some time left for our entry, we decided to see the west facade of the building and ended up finding this pathway leading to some massive sculptures. All the shops around Opera Garnier were screaming Parisian vibes, and we took some time to make some Kannada poetry videos for a poetry channel we maintain. Then it was time to enter, and we were simply stunned by the ornate, aesthetically opulent interior. All the pictures and videos we had seen of the place combined together could not overwhelm us as the real place stirred us to sigh endlessly. After Versailles, this was the second time we realized that well-curated opulence can move you and inspire you too. The cave of Pythia at the foot of the grand staircase, the intrados of the staircase, is full of plant motifs and masks and shells and musical instruments, all befitting and hailing the intention of building such a space. The Avant foyer, or the foyer of mosaics, was simply breathtaking. Pythia was the priestess of the god of arts, Apollo, sculpted here by the Swiss sculptor and artist Adele, known by her pseudonym Marcello. She wanted her Pythia to look different, and she called this an Indian Pythia, a kind of gypsy, a poor woman of a rather strange and bestial type, illuminated by the spirit. The Baroque grandeur of the interweaving corridors, the spacious landings, the grand and vast stairwells, the alcoves, and everything that makes the interior of Opera Garnier were built to enable movement and socializing of large numbers of lovers of the arts in Paris. At the amphitheater entrance stood Tragedy with her sword and Comedy with her harp. It was then time for the grand foyer. What do you do when you're desperately in need of more new adjectives? When even the word grand could seem dull simply because it's so familiar? Anyway, this was supposed to be the drawing room for the Parisian society, the roof of which contains important moments in the history of music. The foyer has two salons on either side, Salon of the Sun and Salon of the Moon. On the eastern end salon over-door panel, you can see Apollo receiving the lyre. The rectangular panel on the ceiling is music, and the oval panel at the western end is comedy. The oval panel on the eastern end, above Apollo receiving the lyre, is the zodiac. Also, let's take a moment to absorb the grandeur of all the chandeliers. It is ridiculous how beautiful this foyer is. Equally breathtaking are the tapestries and massive curtains. The rest of the image gallery in this foyer include the muses and personifications from the Greek mythology. Muse of comedy, muse of tragedy, dance, lyric poetry, muse of eloquence and epic poetry, muse of music, and so on. It was then time for the auditorium, which has the traditional Italian horseshoe shape. It can seat nearly 2,000 people. The stage is known to accommodate up to 450 artists, making it the largest stage in not just Paris and France, but entire Europe. The chandelier under the ceiling was lit. It was designed by Garnier himself and weighs 7 tons with bronze and crystal making it. The ceiling painting depicts scenes from operas composed by 14 composers, including Mozart, Verdi, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Debussy, and others. It's interesting that while some praised the ceiling painting, others think that it is, I quote, a false note in Garnier's carefully orchestrated interior. We then walked leisurely in the library and another room where costumes from some old ballet shows and performances were displayed. After making some images to the point of exhaustion, we moved on to the souvenir shop, of course, again admiring all the unfailingly pretty things the Parisians make. It was then time for a lovely walk along the Seine. Now it was time for a favorite bookshop, Shakespeare and Company. A friend of mine a few years ago had once gifted me a tote bag from this shop, and I still use it. As and when I started reading about it and other popular bookshops around the world, I started making a list of some of them I wanted to see across Europe and in the US, especially in New York and Brooklyn. One day, for now, you can imagine how gratifying it was to be in Shakespeare and Company after a long wait. Photography is not allowed inside, unfortunately, but it is so quaint and rustic and is home to so much publishing history itself. We picked up a couple of books, sat in the cozy little room on the top floor where there was a cat, and when I told the lady at the counter, a British lady, that it was my first time in Paris and it was my dream to be in this bookshop, she responded warmly and with great kindness. She even gave me some extra stickers for free. I got the seal of the bookshop on my books, of course. No way I would forget that. The walk back to our hotel was scenic and sort of poignant too. And we were a little concerned because our flight to Venezia, Venice from Paris was cancelled due to some strike, and we had to rush to take an all-night bus from Paris to Venezia. And that was our way to get into my second favorite country in the world after India, Italy. So keep an eye out for stories from Italia in the coming weeks. Until then, take care. Bye.